I stood at the edge of the cemetery, my hands gripping the polished mahogany casket as pallbearers lowered it into the ground. The priest's voice droned on about eternal rest and peace, but I barely heard him. Rain threatened overhead, clouds thick and gray like the mood hanging over us. Then someone leaned close to my ear, a man in expensive sunglasses I'd never seen before. His breath smelled like whiskey and cigarettes. "Don't worry," he whispered, smiling slightly. "His fortune will be mine now." I froze. My fingers went numb against the cold wood. Inside that casket lay my uncle. Welcome to Revenge Sanity, where real-life stories expose betrayal, pain, and unexpected twists. Marcus Holloway, the self-made millionaire who'd built an empire from nothing. And this stranger thought he could just take it? Rage flooded through me, hot and sudden. I turned to look at him, but he'd already melted back into the crowd of mourners. Black suits and fake tears everywhere. I pulled out my phone with shaking hands and dialed a number I'd memorized weeks ago. "We need to talk," I said quietly. "Now." Everyone around me mourned Marcus like he was a saint. My mother dabbed her eyes with a handkerchief. My cousins stood with their heads bowed, looking appropriately sad. But I knew something none of them did. Marcus had trusted me with a secret before he died, lying in that hospital bed with tubes in his arms. He gripped my hand with surprising strength and told me the truth about his empire. It wasn't just the businesses everyone knew about. There were hidden accounts, offshore investments, properties registered under shell companies. The Holloways thought they knew the size of the fortune they were fighting over. They had no idea. And the will? Everyone assumed it was locked away in the family mansion, probably in Marcus' study. They were already planning how to find it, how to contest it, how to divide everything up. But the will wasn't there. It was in my apartment, locked in my personal safe. Marcus had given it to me 3 weeks before he died. "You're the only one I trust," he'd said. I stood at his grave now, watching them all pretend to grieve, and smiled slightly. A woman approached me after the burial, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. She wore an expensive black dress and too much jewelry for a funeral. "I'm so sorry for your loss," she said, her voice breaking with emotion. Marcus was such a wonderful man. "I'm Beatrice, a distant cousin from his mother's side." I'd never heard of her. She hugged me, and as she did, her eyes flickered down to my wrist, to the watch Marcus had given me in secret 6 months ago. A Patek Philippe worth more than most people's cars. Her expression shifted for just a second. Interest, calculation, greed. Then the sad mask slipped back on. "We should stay in touch," she said warmly. "Family is so important, especially now." I smiled thinly and nodded. Of course, I'd love that. But inside, I was already cataloging her. Another vulture. Another person who saw Marcus' death as an opportunity. I let her walk away, joining the other mourners at the reception. Let her snoop. Let her look for weaknesses. I wanted to see exactly how far greed would push these people before I made my move. The reception was held at the Holloway Mansion, a sprawling estate Marcus had bought 20 years ago when his first business took off. Caterers moved through rooms serving champagne and expensive appetizers nobody touched. People spoke in low voices, discussing Marcus' legacy, his achievements, his generous spirit. All lies. My cousin Darren stood near the fireplace, already calculating his share. I could see it in his eyes. My mother sat with Marcus' lawyer, Mr. Pierce, discussing arrangements. I took a glass of champagne from a passing tray, my hand trembling slightly, not from sadness, from knowledge. The family accountant had already made a fatal error in the estate calculations. I'd spotted it yesterday when I reviewed the preliminary documents. A misplaced decimal point, an overlooked account, a property valued at 10% of its actual worth. Every person in this room thought they understood the size of Marcus' fortune. They were wrong by millions. I raised my glass in a silent toast to Marcus' memory and took a sip. The question wasn't whether to expose the error. The question was when, and how much chaos I wanted to create when I did. The will reading was scheduled for next week, but I'd already read every word. Marcus had included a clause I knew would destroy the family's plans. Any heir who attempted to claim the estate without proving genuine loyalty to Marcus during his lifetime would forfeit their entire share. The definition of loyalty was deliberately vague, left to the executor's interpretation, and Marcus had named me as co-executor alongside Mr. Pierce. I met with the lawyer privately at his office downtown. He was a thin man in his 60s, professional and careful. "Have you reviewed the loyalty clause?" I asked. He adjusted his glasses nervously. "Yes, it's highly unusual. Some might even say it's contestable. But legal? Technically, yes. If the court upholds Marcus' mental capacity at the time of drafting." I smiled. He was perfectly sound. I have medical records and witness statements to prove it. Mr. Pierce looked at me carefully. "You understand this will cause significant conflict within your family." "I'm counting on it." Later that day, I mentioned the clause casually to my mother. Her face went pale. Within hours, every Holloway knew. Panic had begun. 3 days after the funeral, a new complication arrived. Lydia Pierce, Marcus' former business partner from his earliest ventures. She walked into the mansion like she owned it, wearing a sharp red dress that stood out among all the black. Everyone whispered. Lydia had left Marcus' company 15 years ago after some kind of falling out nobody talked about. Now she was back, and according to rumors, she was named in the will. $50 million. My cousin Darren hissed his brother. That's what people are saying she gets. But I knew something they didn't. I'd been watching Lydia's financial movements for weeks, ever since Marcus told me she'd be involved. She'd been quietly transferring assets to offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. Marcus had suspected she might try something. "Keep an eye on her," he told me. "If she makes a move, you'll need proof." I had screenshots, bank records, transaction histories. Everything I needed. The question was whether to use it now or wait. Lydia caught my eye across the room and smiled. It wasn't friendly. It was a challenge. Game on. I was walking to the mansion's library when I heard voices. Low and urgent. I stopped outside the door listening. "We can't let this loyalty clause stand," my mother said. "It gives him too much power." Agreed. That was Mr. Pierce, the lawyer. "We need to challenge Marcus' mental state. Dementia, undue influence, anything. And the co-executor situation? Can we remove him?" It would take a court order. "And frankly, Mrs. Holloway, your son has been very thorough. He has medical records, witness statements, even video footage of Marcus in sound mind." My mother made a frustrated sound. "There has to be something. I'm working on it. Give me time." I stepped away from the door, my mind racing. They were planning to undermine me, cut me out, probably split everything between the main family members and leave me with nothing. I pulled out my phone and texted Lydia. "We need to talk. Strategy meeting. Tonight." She responded within seconds. "Agreed. Where?" I gave her an address. If the Holloways wanted war, they'd get it, but they'd be fighting on 2 fronts now, and they had no idea how prepared I was. Marcus' fortune wasn't just money sitting in accounts. It was leverage, control, power over people and systems. I'd spent the last 2 weeks since his death carefully planning evidence in various departments of his companies. Nothing illegal, just small financial irregularities that would make people nervous. An unexplained expense here, a questionable transaction there. Enough to make the Holloways start questioning each other. I watched it unfold beautifully. Darren accused his brother of skimming. My mother questioned the accountant. The accountant blamed the financial manager. Everyone was looking at everyone else with suspicion. Meanwhile, I stayed quiet, helpful, concerned. I'm sure it's just confusion from Marcus' death. I'd say everything will sort itself out. But it wouldn't. I'd made sure of that. The twist was perfect. By the time they realized what was happening, they'd already destroyed their own alliances. They'd be too busy fighting each other to fight me. And when the will was finally read, when the loyalty clause came into effect, I'd be the only one standing clean, the only one Marcus had truly trusted. During Marcus' public memorial service at the downtown cathedral, I noticed someone who didn't belong. A man in his 30s, professional but not family, not media. He stood near the back, taking photos on his phone. Not of the service, of the attendees. I watched him carefully. He photographed my mother, Darren, Lydia, even me. Then he left before the service ended. I followed him outside, keeping distance. He climbed into a car and drove away. I memorized the license plate. Later, I called him. Enjoy the memorial? I asked. Silence. Then who is this? Your employer. You did good work today. Send me everything you captured. More silence. How did you? Because I hired you 3 weeks ago. Did you think someone else sent you? I could hear his confusion, but the woman who contacted me said, Forget what she said. I'm the one paying you. Send the photos and await further instructions. I hung up. The Holloways had no idea this corporate spy. They'd noticed work for me. Now I had photos of everyone's reactions, their private conversations, their alliances. Information was ammunition, and I was building an arsenal. Darren approached me at a coffee shop downtown, trying to look casual. We need to talk, he said, sliding into the booth across from me. About the will. What about it? Look, I know there's this loyalty thing, but we're family. We should stick together, right? I stirred my coffee slowly. What exactly are you proposing? He leaned forward, voice dropping. I've got access to some of Marcus' accounts that nobody else knows about. Small ones, side investments. If we work together, we can move them before the official reading. Split them. 50-50. I acted interested. How much are we talking? Maybe 2 million total. Enough to make a difference. I pretended to think. Then I pulled out my phone and showed him a screen. His face went white. What is that? Every account you just mentioned, plus 3 you didn't know I knew about, plus your personal accounts, your crypto wallet, your offshore trust in Belize. Should I continue? His hands shook. How did you? Marcus trusted me with everything, Darren. Everything. Now you have 2 choices. Walk away and keep quiet, or I expose this attempt to the executor, and you forfeit your entire inheritance under the loyalty clause. He stood up, nearly knocking over his coffee. You won't get away with this. I smiled. I already have. The official reading was scheduled for Monday morning. The entire family gathered in Mr. Pierce's conference room, tension thick enough to cut. The lawyer cleared his throat and began reading. Standard stuff at first. Charitable donations, small bequests to employees, property divisions. Then he reached the main portion. To my beloved family, I leave my estate with one critical condition. Any heir who attempts to claim their inheritance without demonstrating genuine loyalty during my lifetime shall forfeit their entire portion. Everyone started talking at once. That's insane. What does loyalty even mean? This can't be legal. Mr. Pierce raised his hand for silence. There is a secondary clause I must now disclose, one that was sealed until this moment. He pulled out another envelope, breaking the wax seal. My heart pounded. I hadn't known about this. In the event of disputes regarding the loyalty determination, Marcus Holloway appointed a sole arbitrator to make all final decisions. That arbitrator is his nephew, the co-executor of this will. He looked directly at me. Every eye in the room turned to me. Shock, anger, disbelief. I controlled my expression carefully, but inside, I was smiling. Marcus, you brilliant man. The room erupted. This is outrageous, my mother shouted. He's barely 30 years old. Marcus was clearly manipulated, Darren added, glaring at me. There's no way this is legitimate. Lydia sat quietly in the corner, watching everything with calculating eyes. Mr. Pierce held up the document. I assure you, this was drafted by 3 separate law firms and witnessed by multiple parties. Marcus Holloway was of sound mind and clear intent. Any challenges will be heard in probate court. But I must warn you, contesting this will may itself be viewed as disloyal behavior under the terms. That silenced some of them, but not all. My mother stood up. Fine, let him be the arbitrator. We'll prove our loyalty. We supported Marcus for decades. What did he do? She pointed at me. Visited him a few times. Had some conversations. I stood slowly, meeting her eyes. I have recordings. I said quietly. Hours of conversations with Marcus where he discusses each of you, your gambling debts, Darren, your affair mother, your embezzlement, cousin James. Should I continue? The room went deathly silent. Marcus knew everything, I said, and he told me everything. So when we talk about loyalty, understand that I know exactly who deserves what. As everyone filed out of the conference room in shock, a man I'd never seen before approached me. He was older, maybe 70, with silver hair and an expensive suit. Impressive performance, he said with a slight smile. I'm Theodore Blackwell, Marcus' oldest friend and executor of certain secret trusts. He handed me an envelope, thick, sealed with red wax. What is this? I asked. Additional assets Marcus kept separate from the main estate, properties in Europe, art collections, vintage car portfolio, worth approximately $40 million. He wanted someone trustworthy to manage them. The family was watching from across the lobby. I could feel their stares. Why give this to me? I asked Theodore. He smiled wider. Because Marcus predicted exactly what would happen at that reading. He told me months ago that you'd handle it perfectly. He was right. I opened the envelope slightly. Inside was a letter in Marcus' handwriting. Everything is already in your name, Theodore said quietly. Has been for 6 weeks. I'm just a messenger. He shook my hand and walked away. I looked at the envelope, then at my family's furious faces. Marcus had been planning this for longer than any of them realized. The Holloways tried everything. They pressured Mr. Pierce in his office, suggesting he'd be sued for malpractice. They called lawyers, demanding second opinions. My mother even tried emotional manipulation, showing up at my apartment with tears. How can you do this to your family? She asked. Marcus would be ashamed. I let her talk. When she finished, I played a recording on my laptop. Marcus' voice, weak but clear from his hospital bed. If my family tries to guilt you, ignore them. They only cared about my money, not me. You were the only one who visited just to talk. The only one who listened. Don't let them manipulate you. My mother's face crumbled. He said that. He said a lot of things. I have 40 hours of recordings. Would you like to hear more? She left without answering. Later that week, they made their biggest mistake. Darren and 2 other cousins went to Mr. Pierce's office after hours and threatened him, told him to fix the loyalty clause or face consequences. What they didn't know was that I'd given Mr. Pierce a recording device. I had everything on tape. Their threats, their conspiracy to forge documents, their plan to bribe court officials. When exposed, it wouldn't just cost them their inheritance. It might cost them their freedom. Someone leaked the will to the media. Probably Darren, thinking public pressure would help. Instead, it backfired spectacularly. Millionaires will cause this family war, read the headlines. Reporters called constantly. News vans parked outside the mansion. The story had everything. Family drama, mysterious clauses, a young heir with all the power. Then I made my move. I gave an exclusive interview to the city's biggest newspaper. I brought documents showing the family's financial mismanagement of Marcus companies in his final years. Showed proof of their gambling, their affairs, their lies. Marcus Holloway built an empire, I told a reporter. His family tried to spend it before he was even gone. He wrote that will to protect what he created. I'm just honoring his wishes. The article ran on the front page. Public opinion shifted overnight. Social media exploded with support for me and criticism of the Holloways. Good for him. Family isn't always blood. Those greedy relatives deserve nothing. The funeral that had started everything became a cultural moment. People were choosing sides, sharing stories of their own family betrayals. My mother called, furious, but there was nothing she could do. The court of public opinion had already decided. Lydia requested a meeting at her downtown office. I arrived expecting confrontation. Instead, she poured 2 glasses of wine and sat across from me with a business proposal. You've played this brilliantly, she said. Better than I expected. Thank you. I'm serious. Marcus always said you were smart. I didn't believe him. I thought you were just a nephew who got lucky. I was wrong. She slid a folder across the desk. I have assets Marcus didn't know about. Investments we made together before our partnership ended. They've grown considerably. Worth about $30 million now. I flipped through the folder. Real estate, tech stocks, private equity. All legitimate. What do you want? I asked. A merger of sorts. My assets plus your control over Marcus' estate. We become partners. 50-50 on everything. I studied her carefully. Why? Because you're going to win this fight with your family. That's obvious. But winning means you'll control $100 million empire alone. That's a target on your back. Partners share risk. She had a point. Enemies were easier to manage than isolation. I'll need full transparency. I said, everything you have, every account, every investment. She smiled, already prepared. She handed me another folder, thicker than the first. The question is, do you trust me? I looked at her for a long moment. No, but I don't need to trust you. I just need our interests aligned. She raised her glass. To aligned interests. I clinked mine against hers. The Holloways were about to face something worse than one opponent. They were about to face two. My mother broke down 3 weeks after the will reading. I found her sitting alone in Marcus' study, crying, not the fake tears she'd shown at the funeral. Real ones. I'm sorry, she said when she saw me. For all of it. I sat down across from her, saying nothing. We always treated you like you weren't enough, she continued. Not as smart as Darren. Not as successful as James. Not worth as much attention. I see that now. I see why Marcus chose you. Her hand shook. Can you forgive us? I thought about all the years of being overlooked. The family gatherings where I sat at the kids' table long after I'd become an adult. The business discussions I wasn't included in. The investments they made without asking my opinion. Forgiveness isn't the issue, I said quietly. The issue is that you only care now because I have power. Where were these apologies when Marcus was alive? When I visited him every week and none of you bothered? She had no answer. The loyalty clause exists for a reason. I continued. Marcus saw who each of you really were. This is my revenge. It's his. I stood up to leave. Wait, she said. What happens now? I paused at the door. That depends. Are you sorry you treated me poorly? Or are you sorry you lost access to the money? She couldn't meet my eyes. I had my answer. The Holloways launched their legal challenge in probate court, a full contest of Marcus' will, claiming undue influence and mental incapacity. Their lawyers filed hundreds of pages of documents. They brought medical experts to testify about Marcus' condition in his final months. They painted me as a manipulator who'd taken advantage of a dying man. I sat in the courtroom, calm and prepared. When it was my turn, I presented 40 hours of video recordings. Marcus, alert and articulate, discussing his business decisions. Marcus, explaining his reasoning for the loyalty clause. Marcus, describing in detail why he trusted me and not his family. The judge watched several clips. In one, Marcus looked directly at the camera and said, if my family contests this will, it only proves I was right about them. They care about money, not about my wishes. The courtroom went silent. The Holloway's lawyer tried to argue the recordings were edited or coached. My legal team destroyed that argument with forensic analysis and witness testimony from a medical staff who'd been present during filming. After 2 days of hearings, the judge denied the challenge. Marcus withstood. The loyalty clause remained in effect, and I remained sole arbitrator. When we left the courthouse, reporters surrounded us. The Holloways pushed through without comment. I stopped and spoke clearly. Justice has been served. Marcus' legacy will be protected. Darren made one last desperate move. He went to Lydia privately, thinking he could drive a wedge between us. He offered her a deal, help him challenge my authority, and he'd give her a larger share of what he got. What he didn't know was that Lydia and I had anticipated this. We'd installed recording devices in her office weeks ago. When Darren made his proposal, We captured every word. So you want me to betray my partner? Lydia asked, playing along. Why would I do that? Because he's going to screw you eventually, Darren said. He's going to take everything. You're just a tool to him. And what would you offer me instead? 20 million. Cash. Offshore accounts. Untraceable. Lydia pretended to consider it. Let me think about it. The moment Darren left, she called me. We had him. Not just violating the loyalty clause, but attempting bribery and conspiracy. I took the recording to Mr. Pierce and the court. Within 24 hours, Darren's inheritance was officially forfeited. All of it. He'd get nothing. When he found out, he called me screaming. You set me up. No, I said calmly. You set yourself up. I just gave you enough rope. He hung up. Later, I heard he'd file for bankruptcy. Turns out he'd been betting on his inheritance to pay off massive debts. Without it, he was ruined. I felt no sympathy. I returned to the cemetery where it all began. Marcus' grave had a new headstone now, elegant black granite with simple letters. I stood there alone, remembering that moment at the funeral. The stranger's whispered words. The rage I'd felt. His fortune will be mine now. I'd thought about that man often. Never found out who he was. Maybe just another opportunist. Or maybe someone Marcus had crossed in business. It didn't matter. What mattered was that moment had crystallized something in me. The realization that everyone around Marcus saw him as an opportunity, not a person. Everyone except me. I'd visited him because I genuinely cared. Because he told good stories and gave solid advice. Because he was lonely and appreciated company. The fortune had been a surprise. I did what you asked, I said to the headstone. Protected your legacy from the vultures. Made sure the loyal were rewarded and the greedy got nothing. Wind rustled through the cemetery trees. I imagined him smiling, approving. Thank you for trusting me, I said. Then I turned and walked away. There was work to do, an empire to run, a promise to keep. Over the next 6 months, I quietly assumed control of Marcus Business Holdings. I met with CEOs, reviewed operations, made strategic decisions. The Holloways watched from the outside, powerless. Some of them had received small bequests, enough to survive, but nowhere near what they'd expected. My mother got the mansion, but little else. Darren got nothing. Various cousins received token amounts. I could have been cruel, could have cut them off completely. But Marcus will have been specific. Those who showed minimal loyalty received minimal rewards. Only those who showed active disloyalty were completely disinherited. The businesses thrived under proper management. Without the family drama, without the constant fighting over resources, profits increased. Stocks rose. Marcus' empire grew even after his death. I made sure his favorite charities received generous donations. Made sure his employees got bonuses he'd promised, but never delivered. Made sure his legacy was more than just money. By the time they realized what was happening, the transfer was complete. The empire was legally, officially, permanently mine, and there was nothing anyone could do about it. My mother requested a meeting 6 months after the probate hearing. We met at a neutral coffee shop downtown. She looked tired, older than I remembered. I want to apologize, she said, properly this time. I waited. Everything you said was true. We treated you terribly. We took you for granted. And we only care about Marcus' money. She took a breath. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking for money. I just wanted you to hear me say I was wrong. I studied her face, looking for deception. Found only regret. Why now? I asked. Because I've had 6 months to think. To realize what we lost. Not the money. Well, not only the money. We lost you. You were family and we threw that away for greed. She pushed an envelope across the table. What's this? Keys to the mansion. I'm moving out. I don't want to live in a house built on Marcus' success when I contributed nothing to it. It should be yours. I didn't touch the envelope. I don't want the mansion, I said. Keep it live there. But understand something. Our relationship will never be what it could have been. That's not cruelty. That's just reality. She nodded, tears in her eyes. I understand. We sat in silence for a moment, but I added, we don't have to be enemies. Respect works both ways. Show me the person you should have been, and maybe we can build something new. She smiled weakly. I like that. Darren and the other cousins tried one final maneuver. They went to the media claiming I'd isolated them from their rightful inheritance. They painted themselves as victims of a greedy, manipulative nephew. Several news outlets ran their stories. Family tore apart by contested wool. Millionaire's relatives claim unfair treatment. The headlines were designed to make me look bad. Except I prepared for this. I released the recordings of their schemes. Darren's attempt to embezzle. James' threats against Mr. Pierce. Their conspiracy to bribe officials. I released financial records showing their spending habits while Marcus was alive. Vacations, luxury purchases, gambling losses, all while claiming to support him. The media narrative flipped instantly. Entitled heirs exposed. Greed destroys family. Every move they made to paint me as a villain backfired. Every interview where they complained about fairness reminded people of their own greed. Social media destroyed them. Public opinion turned completely against them. One cousin lost his job. Another faced investigation for fraud. Darren's bankruptcy became public record. And suddenly people understood why he'd been so desperate for the inheritance. Within weeks, they stopped talking to media, stopped fighting, stopped everything. They'd lost completely, and everyone knew it. Their reputations were ruined beyond repair, and I'd barely had to lift a finger. Lydia came to my office with news. The merger of our assets had been remarkably successful. Combined, we controlled over $150 million in diverse investments. You know what's interesting? She said, reviewing quarterly reports. Marcus would be proud of this. He always wanted someone to expand his legacy, not just preserve it. You knew him better than I realized. I said. She nodded. We had our differences, but I respected him. He was brilliant, just stubborn. Our partnership ended over strategy, not trust. Why did you really agree to work with me? I asked. She looked up, considering her answer. Because you remind me of young Marcus. Before success changed him. Before family obligations weighed him down. You're smart, careful, and you actually care about doing things right. That sounds like a compliment. It is. I expected you to be vindictive after everything they did. Instead, you were strategic, measured. You punished those who deserved it, but didn't destroy people unnecessarily. That takes character. She stood to leave, then paused. Marcus made the right choice. I hope you know that. After she left, I sat in silence. The weight of responsibility was enormous. But for the first time since the funeral, I felt like I truly deserved it. Not because of blood, because of character. I returned to the cemetery 1 year after Marcus' funeral. Same gray clouds, same quiet atmosphere. But everything else had changed. I'd successfully managed the empire, grown the investments, protected the legacy. The Holloways had learned their lesson about greed. Most had moved on with their lives, humbled and distant. I placed flowers on Marcus' grave and stood there remembering. The whispered threat at the funeral, the chaos of the reading, the battles and betrayals. You knew exactly what would happen, I said to the headstone. You engineered all of it. The loyalty clause, the recordings, the public exposure. You gave me the tools and watched to see if I'd use them wisely. A year ago, I'd been angry, ready for revenge. But Marcus had taught me something better. That true victory wasn't about destruction. It was about building something that lasted. About proving that respect, skill, and patience outweighed family favoritism and entitlement. The Holloway's public humiliation had become a cautionary tale across the business community. Earned success versus inherited entitlement. That's how people described it. I left the cemetery quietly, letting the memories settle. Marcus' revenge hadn't been violent or cruel. It had been elegant, measured, and irreversible. And I'd been the instrument of it. Not because I was family, because I was worthy. If you were in my place, what would you have done? Share your thoughts in the comments, and if you have a story to tell, you're not alone here.